Honorable leaders, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, both online and offline, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to today's forum, Day 2, Parallel Session 5, Catalyzing Green Finance for Achieving Carbon Peaking and Neutrality. I'm today's moderator. My name is Lu Xuedu from ADB. And in our parallel session, we'll focus on the topic, as mentioned, catalyzing green finance for achieving carbon peaking and neutrality. I'll moderate in Chinese, not in bilingual, for the convenience of the backstage performance. But we provide a simultaneous interpretation, so you can choose the channel accordingly. Due to COVID-19 containment, maybe we do not have a full house, but we have a large number of online participants. For Day 1, we had over 800,000 Chinese participants join us online, and 200,000 international participants. So, despite the COVID-19, we only have 700 participants on site. But it gives us a good opportunity to reduce carbon footprint. So let me take 1 or 2 minutes to talk about green finance, the topic for today's parallel session. It started from UK. Yesterday, President Ma Jin gave us a keynote speech on green finance in the keynote session. And I don't want to be repetitive. So no matter for the production design or theory or application, rule standards, and we still have a long way to go to support green finance. And it's a great pleasure to have these experts from home and abroad in the research institutes, policy-making departments, to share with us their respective experience. I believe we'll learn a lot and be inspired from their presentations this morning. So no matter you join us online or offline, I believe you will get valuable information from this session. So for the first session, we have 6 speakers. For the second session, we'll have 2 keynote presentations and a panel discussion. The first speaker is Rhys Gordon-Jones, counselor from British Embassy in Beijing. As I mentioned, he works with British Embassy Beijing. And he joined the embassy in 2018 in June, and mainly works for financial professional services, and also works in a lot of programs like Pact and other prosperity country programs. He has thorough knowledge in the policies and also practical experience. So the floor is yours, Mr. Gordon-Jones. Honorable leaders, dear experts, good morning. My name is Rhys Gordon-Jones. As introduced by Maudine later, I'm the Counselor, Financial and Professional Services from British Embassy, Beijing. But I have to switch back to English.
You, Xuedu, for your kind words of introduction. We just met a few weeks ago, actually, in Beijing at China Climate Week. It's an absolute honor to speak today at the Asia-Pacific Forum on Green and Low-Carbon Development, and it's fantastic to be in the vibrant city of Changsha again. I was here earlier in the year. My sincere thanks to the Hunan Innovative Low Carbon Center and Asia Development Bank for a huge amount of effort that has clearly gone into making this summit such a success. Today, we are here to find solutions to tackling climate change, a crisis that simply cannot be solved by any one country alone. The latest report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change starkly outlines the challenge. Not only is it unequivocal that human influence has warmed the planet, but the scale of recent changes across the climate system as a whole is unprecedented over many thousands of years. This year, we have seen countless examples around the world of adverse weather events with tragic consequences. To tackle climate change, there is no doubt that unprecedented levels of investment in green and low-carbon technologies are required, in services and infrastructure, which is dearly needed. According to UN estimates, achieving the objectives of the Paris Agreement will require a total investment of $90 trillion, which is roughly equivalent to the entirety of assets under management around the world today. It is also estimated that for China to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060, investment of 150 to 300 trillion renminbi will be required, an average of 3.75 to 7.5 trillion renminbi every year, which is roughly 10% of annual investment across the world. Thankfully, governments around the world are setting clear policy direction. 126 governments have now committed to net zero goals, including both, of course, UK and China. In the UK, we feel passionately that we must play a leading role in tackling climate change. In 2019, we became the first major developed country to set a net zero carbon emissions target, and we put this into law. Our markets have shown how capital can be scaled and mobilized towards sustainable investment. Since 2010, more than £92 billion has been invested into clean energy in the UK. In 2012, we established the world's first green investment bank to demonstrate how finance can be both sustainable and profitable. The Green Investment Bank helped finance more than 100 green infrastructure projects, forging innovative structuring solutions that crowded in private sources of capital, particularly into areas such as offshore wind. The legacy of the Green Investment Bank now continues in the private sector, but is profitable and under Macquarie Bank. And this year, the UK Infrastructure Bank was officially launched with its headquarters in Leeds, and it'll be a pivotal tool in achieving net zero, as it is tasked with accelerating investment into clean energy, transport, digital, water, and waste. But we recognise that governments alone cannot mobilise sufficient capital. We need the commercial sector to ensure that. So the government has launched the UK's Green Finance Strategy, which I was working on before coming to China, where I was the UK's lead official on green finance for 3 years, 3 years ago. And the UK government was working hand in hand with the financial sector, with the aim of aligning private sector financial flows with clean, environmentally sustainable and resilient growth, while also strengthening the competitiveness of the UK's financial sector. Now, Mark Carney, who's the former Bank of England governor and current advisor to both the Prime Minister and the UN on climate and finance, has a mantra, and that mantra is what gets managed, what gets measured even gets managed. This is precisely why the UK has committed to making the recommendations of a task force on climate-related financial disclosures fully mandatory across our economy by 2025, with many large financial institutions and listed companies required to do so as soon as this year. And earlier this week, the government published our roadmap to sustainable investing, which sets out further detail on how decision-useful information is available to consumers and investors by ensuring investment products, financial services firms, and real economy corporates all report consistent information on sustainability. We are streamlining disclosure requirements, including our commitment on TCFD with reporting requirements on environmental impact, and making things clearer for consumers. Investment products will now need to set out disclosures showing the risks and opportunities of the activities they finance on sustainability. This will be accompanied by a label being developed by the Financial Conduct Authority that will help aid consumers make informed decisions. We are also supporting the IFRS Foundation to launch a new International Sustainability Standards Board to ensure disclosures are consistent and comparable across jurisdictions. And last month, the UK issued our first ever green sovereign bond, raising over £10 billion to fund green projects. We received record subscriptions of more than £123 billion, and it was the largest inaugural green issuance by any sovereign, but then the EU pipped us just a few weeks ago. This allowed us to raise capital at a premium to standard sovereign issuance. The Green Gilt will be followed later this year for the world's first standalone green savings bond issued by National Savings and Investments. These two products will give UK investors and savers the opportunity to join the collective fight against climate change while creating green jobs across the country. But we must work with global partners, and China is the first among equals. The UK government is proud to be supporting China since the very beginning of our green finance journey. We have been working with China in international fora on this topic, including the G20, and I was the UK's representative to the Green Finance Study Group for many years, and we have been working bilaterally exceedingly closely too. We are very pleased to see that China has taken a lot of action to tackle climate change. Since April this year, there have been new policies issued which cover overarching green finance areas almost every month. The newly released Green Bond Guidelines further harmonise domestic green bond standards with global standards, removing clean coal and secondary oil and gas extraction. The EU and China released their taxonomies at the same time, signalling China's desire for coordinated action on climate change. And the China Securities and Regulatory Commission published revised standards concerning information disclosure by companies offering securities, adding a chapter on ESG, creating a foundation for a mandatory disclosure framework for listed companies. And Governor Yi Gang of the PBOC stated that the central bank will support the development of standardized international climate reporting framework, which will encourage domestic financial institutions to report in line with TCFD, and is developing mandatory climate-related disclosures. And China's Ministry of Finance has also expressed support for the International Financial Reporting Standards Foundation for the establishment of that International Standards Board I mentioned earlier. And of course, President Xi announced at the UN General Assembly that China will no longer fund overseas coal. This is hugely welcome and is an important step in ensuring the 1.5-degree goal of Paris remains alive. Of course, there is still so much more to do. For me, I see 3 areas where together we can make progress. One is signing up to the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, or GFANZ. This brings together over 160 financial institutions representing $70 trillion of assets under management, including more than 40 banks that are founding members of the new UN-backed Net Zero Banking Alliance. All initiatives in GFANZ require signatories to set science-based interim and long-term goals to achieve net zero no later than 2050. We need China to support this work if it is to be a success. So I want to work with Chinese financial institutions and government to find a way for you all to sign up. 2, we need comparable, consistent, and reliable disclosures if financial decision-making is going to accurately reflect climate risks. We welcome China's upcoming mandatory disclosure regime, and we want it to be consistent with TCFD. I hope this extends to the disclosure regime for listed companies too. Until then, we need as many institutions as possible to sign up to TCFD. 3, we still need to raise ambition ahead of COP. We want to see an ambitious new nationally determined contribution from China, and I hope that includes progress on carbon intensity. Now, COP26, it opens in just 9 days' time. It's going to be hosted in Glasgow, in the UK, and this is UN Climate Change Conference. The planet needs COP to be a success. But COP is also a unique opportunity for all of us to scale global green finance, deepen our cooperation with China, and forge new frontiers in innovation. We must grasp this opportunity when the expecting eyes of the world will be upon us to put an end to irreversible climate change. Today's forum is pivotal. We need the tools, the knowledge, and the expertise to turn political commitments into reality. Only then will capital flow to where it all needs to be. So thank you very much, and I look forward to listening to the rest of today's event. Thank you. 谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, Royce, for your really very informative message to our audience. 我觉得他讲的那个。
Thank you, Mr. Rhys Gomes, for this informative presentation about the green finance effort, especially on the UK side, and your expectations for working with Chinese counterparts, as well as expectations for COP26. So thank you for this passionate speech. ADB actually has a very good cooperation with UK too. So on behalf of ADB, I would like to thank for the effort from UK. We have a special fund on CCUAs with UK. It's called CCUAs, and we have further discussion on that part.
Next, let's kick off the second presentation. I would like to invite Secretary Xu Junping of Hunan Finance Society to give us his presentation. He's in charge of these efforts on behalf of the PBOC in China. His PhD of economics, and used to be a deputy division chief for financial stability division in Hangzhou, the division chief for financial research division of PBOC, amidst a host of other positions. He is a government official and researcher. As we can see, the PBOC plays a pivotal role in green finance-related policies in China, because they are giving the mandates to commercial banks in order to press ahead with green finance initiatives. They are setting the tone for the overall developments. So we're looking forward to Secretary Xu's presentation, please. Distinguished participants, good morning. I'd like to thank the moderator for your introduction. I'd like to thank the host for your invitation for me to attend this session. Let me give you some updates on how we are supporting green finance. So my agenda is as follows in 4 parts. First, working principles for financial support for green and low-carbon development. Second, measures we have taken in this regard. Third, some basics and latest developments. Fourth, an outlook for future activities. For the PBOC to push forward green finance, we'll give full play to the 3 key functions of the financial sector in resource allocation, risk management, and market-based pricing. In terms of resource allocation, Monetary policies, credit policies will be leveraged to gear capital towards low-carbon projects, so as to improve the return on investment and access to finance by low-carbon projects versus carbon-intensive projects. And at the same time, the green preferences for the business community and consumers will be solidified. In terms of risk management, we are focusing on climate risk, including physical risk and transition risk. For market pricing, we mainly refer to carbon pricing. Back in 2011, in cities like Shenzhen, Beijing, across 7 provinces, there was a pilot on carbon emission rights trading. Now, in July this year, the national market went live. So the second overarching strategy is to establish 5 pillars. First pillar, standard system for green finance. On the part of the PBOC, we have promulgated green bond, green credit, and environmental disclosure standards. And it is in the process of converging to some international standards and practices at present. The second pillar is regarding regulatory and information disclosure requirements for financial institutions. And Mr. Gordon has touched on that. Now, we're also working with the UK on some of the standards. Multiple institutions in China have completed their information disclosure frameworks. And the third pillar is the policy incentive system as well as a constraint mechanism. Fourth pillar is focused on product mix for green finance, such as green bonds, green loans, green insurance, as well as other financial products. By the end of second quarter, we had an outstanding balance of 13.92 trillion RMB yuan of green loans, with a year-on-year growth of 26.5%, with a higher growth rate on other categories of loans, accounting for 7.26% of the entire loan book, 2.3% higher than that of last year. Pillar 5, Green Finance International Cooperation. We have established the NGFS, and within the framework of G20 Sustainability Council, we are pushing for more activities within the framework of G20 towards sustainability. So far, it's fair to say that green finance we have completed theoretical studies for green finance. Now it's time to put it into practice. And we have observed the 3 functions and 5 pillars set forth by the PBOC to push forward our green finance initiatives. In terms of what is happening in Hunan province, according to the 3060 targets announced by the central government and the arrangements made by PBOC, we are strengthening institutional build-up. At Hunan province, we have established a working group for green finance. We've also put in place a cross-departmental coordination or interdepartmental coordination mechanism to achieve information sharing and other synchronization and coordination. We've put in place a green finance policy framework as well, in tandem with the local branches of CBEC, CSRC, NDRC, the local branch for the Ministry of Housing, as well as in the total of 9 organizations. Now let me give you a detailed update on the guidance on financial support for green and low-carbon development in Hunan province. There are 7 parts in this opinion, or what we call guidance. First, consolidate the foundation for green finance. Under this title, that covers information disclosure, the establishment of corporate and individual carbon accounts, building a provincial green and low carbon project bank, establishing a sound environmental information sharing, strengthening the construction of environmental equity trading market, build a comprehensive service platform for green finance. The second part is to increase green loans and green credit. We could see that we are focusing on clean energy, carbon emission reduction, and energy efficiency projects. And so we're broadening the channels of direct financing for green finance, such as green bonds and the IPO of low-carbon companies, as well as the establishment of green funds. And then we're also putting in place a green financial service system so as to improve the organizational structure for green finance. We're also offering innovative green financial products and services, also stepping up capacity building and KPI assessment. Number 5, we are strengthening green finance incentives and constraints. Everybody's talking about supportive instruments for emission reduction. Yeah, we are very much focused on that. We're also working to improve the quality of data and the effectiveness of the assessment system. We're also stepping up fiscal support, such as fiscal subsidies and preferential taxation treatment for those projects. Number 6, we're strengthening climate-related financial risk management. We are establishing a mechanism for the monitoring, identification, early warning, and disposal of climate financial risks. Number 7, we are strengthening coordination and interlinking mechanisms. There's more synergy and coordination as a result. And also, we are rolling out further financial reform pilot projects with a focus on green finance offerings. Well, it's fair to say that this guidance document is an all-embracive and comprehensive document outlining the framework for green finance in Hunan province. And it has also provided valuable guidance for the various departments and agencies to stay put in this and make further progress in this effort. Secondly, we are strengthening both incentives and constraints according to the requirements of the guidance. Now, we are carrying out more and more green finance evaluation projects. We are improving upon the green finance monitoring network so as to unify standards of green finance performance assessment. And we are developing more scenarios and use cases for green finance at the same time. Thirdly, under 2, we are pressing ahead with 2 pilot projects, as previous speakers have talked about. The first pilot is on environmental information disclosure. For the first stage, we have enrolled 5 commercial banks or other financial institutions into this pilot. And next year, we're going to expand the pilot to all the financial institutions in Hunan province. So by the end of June next year, the 2021 environmental disclosure report will have been completed and disclosed. And phase 2, we will carry out pilots for carbon accounting by financial institutions. Carbon accounting features a tremendous amount of detailed work. How do we do it in a science-based way so that we can use accounting to reflect the efficiency and performance of green finance projects? That's a very important task, and we're doing a lot of research and studies leading to that. And we're urging financial institutions to offer more innovative green finance products and services, such as PV loans, energy saving loans, the chain loans, with the interest rate, preferential interest rate offerings. Next, I want to talk about some basic developments of green finance. The first category is green credits. By the end of June, we had a balance of green credit of 377.8 billion RMB yuan, with a 24.3% year-on-year growth and 10% higher in terms of growth rate than other classes of loans. And the interest rate tends to be lower, of course. And then for large commercial banks, they account for 54%, while the CDB and the policy-driven banks account for 27%. And the green infrastructure-related projects account for almost 50%, with the other three sectors of ecological and environmental industry, clean production, and green services accounting for 15% each. I hope for clean energy and energy saving projects, there should be more loans extended to those efforts. Now, the second category is green bond issuance. So far, the balance of issuance tops 20+ billion RMB. We have other instruments of green finance, such as green trust, green insurance, and green industry funds, but they account for a relatively smaller share in the portfolio. We also learned from other green finance pilot zones. After some benchmarking, we have identified some gaps to catch up with. So going forward, focus on the 3 functions and 5 pillars in tandem with other government departments. We will, especially based on the guidance document I've described, we will further improve upon our green finance mechanisms and measures by improving upon the infrastructure, expanding and enhancing product and service innovation, so on and so forth, particularly with regard to clean energy, emission reduction technologies, and accounting carbon reduction accounting techniques. I will count on greater support from all of you to offer more suggestions and ideas to us so that we will do the job even better. Thank you very much. Thank you, Secretary Xu, for your presentation. So his presentation, we have had a holistic picture of what Hunan province, or especially the provincial government, is doing with regard to policies, actions, and measures. Next year, at the same conference, we will look forward to the next presentation by Secretary Xu about the latest progress on the implementation of the guidance and some innovations and new products. Next, I'd like to invite an ADB expert, a senior financial sector specialist of the Asian Development Bank, Mr. Huang Anqian. We are colleagues, and he's before 2005, he was working in the World Bank, office in Bolivia. And at ADB, he first was with the South Asia sub-regional office. A couple of years ago, he moved to the East Asia office. He has a great deal of experience on green finance, and he will share with us the ADB practice on green finance. So, Mr. Huang Anqian, you have the floor. Well, I've developed my presentation in English, hence I will do it in English.
So the first, I would like to talk about the overall ADB's strategy towards supporting green and sustainable finance. So here, I would like to talk about the PRC development plan and also ADB's overall policy framework, areas of ADB's project and TA support, and also ADB's financing modalities. Then I would like to talk about the ADB sample lending projects. And towards the end, I would like to talk about ADB's overall value addition to green and sustainable finance. And lastly, I would like to describe the way forward. So first, I would like to talk about the ADB's first, I would like to talk about the PRC's overall development plan. So ADB is work within the context of PRC's 14th five-year plan to support sustainable and green development. And also, we are also helping the government to try to achieve its carbon peaking and the carbon neutrality objectives by 2030 and 2060, respectively. And in this context, the PRC government has also been developing green and sustainable finance, which has become a major instrument to help achieve these carbon objectives. And so within this umbrella, ADB is developing ADB's policy framework is to support this overall government objectives. Okay, so the environmentally sustainable growth within ADB is a key strategic development agenda. And the environment is a core area of our support. So there are a few ADB strategic guidelines. And first is the ADB Overall Strategy 2030 that supports the overall green economic growth. And also at the same time, ADB has developed its green and the blue bond framework to support the identification of qualified projects and the sub-projects. And then between ADB and the People's Republic of China, we have developed this PRC country partnership strategy over the next 5 years, from 2021 to 2025. And it has 3 pillars, and 2 of them, one is to support the climate, and the other is to support environmental sustainability. And you can see how important it is the ADB strategy towards support government's objective. So the area of ADB's project and the TA support, because the PRC has been moving away from a purely output-based economic model and moved towards a high-quality growth model. So the project identifications should support the PRC's high-quality growth and focus on strong value addition, innovation, impact, demonstration, and replicability. And so we have the following few modalities. So we can use the green finance relending modality, which we can give the ADB funds to a bank or a non-bank financial institution to provide a relending facility including through the government, local government finance platforms, or we can give the money directly to a commercial bank. So those would be the re-lending modality. At the same time, we could also provide the development funds, try to create a equity funds and to support other more early stage green and sustainable development ventures as well. Okay, so that's the first one. So the second is through direct lending. So we can also do project loans, such as we can support a co-transition, we can support a green transportation, green buildings, more high technology area, such as hydrogen power. We can support habitat restoration, renewable energy in general, and also the energy efficiency projects. The third is ADB is also able to support the green and the transition bond. And we can also provide a credit enhancement, such as partial credit guarantee, we call it PCG, to any project facilities or to any other financing platforms that are not yet commercially viable. And lastly, we have also other maybe slightly less frequently used modality is the policy-based or some results-based lending modalities. So the ADB financing, we have two windows. We have one is the sovereign window, one is the non-sovereign window. So the sovereign window has a standard lending rates based on US dollars, Japanese yen, and also euro. And the Chinese renminbi is also possible. We call the local currency financing that we can also provide. But then the lending term would be quite different, would completely depends on the market condition. So within the three standard major currencies of US dollars, Japanese yen, and the euros, we have lending modalities up to 30 years of maturity, including up to 8 years of a grace period. And for the ADB non-sovereign and also private sector lending window, the loans structures are roughly similar, but then it would be on commercial terms. So the overall due diligence, pricing, and also the risk assessment, the credit risk assessment process would be commercially based. It would be market based. And also ADB private sector window could also provide equity investment and other hybrid product between debt and equity when it's necessary. So here I'm providing a few of the ADB sample lending projects. The most well-known are probably the Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei air improvement program over the last 5 to 6 years. So it's from 2015 mostly to 2020. And the first loan was a policy-based loan, and then subsequently was followed by some project and also financial intermediation loans. So far there are a total of 6 sovereign lendings in the amount of $2.2 billion. And in 2019, we have provided a $100 million facility to the Shandong provincial government to develop this Shandong Green Development Fund projects, which we are currently working with GCF, the Green Climate Fund, to provide additional finance. So this is a very innovative project that would use the fund modality to support a green finance in Shandong province. And in 2020, we have developed this Bank of Xintai Green Finance Development Project. Bank of Xintai is a small regional city commercial bank. And we have drastically enhanced its capacity by introducing not only the domestic but also the European Union Green Finance Taxonomy, and we have also introduced the various of ESG and also the disclosure requirement that is based on, for example, the disclosure requirement was based on the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, so have significantly uplifted the overall city commercial banks' capacity to meet international standards of the green finance. And currently, we are also working on two non-sovereign lending proposals. One is to a regional bank for blue bond subscription. That is mostly to support ocean health and ocean economy. And then the other is to support a regional commercial bank for micro small enterprise decarbonization. All of these are supporting the objectives of the carbon peaking and carbon neutrality in the PRC. So ADB's overall value addition, we intend to provide a long-term funds that is in general not available in the market to facilitate sector development. And also we leverage ADB's finance to catalyze greater market finance. So in a project, we don't finance 100% of the total project cost. We would just give, let's say, 30 to 40%, and we use that leverage, try to crowd in market finance and provide support to private sector development. And then also we are working with financial intermediaries to facilitate the green finance product development. And fourth, we try to develop relevant institutional and project capacities, such as our work with Bank of Xintai, and we try to provide support to project environmental and social safeguard, and to introduce the international best practice, such as the Equator Principle. And we would introduce the concept of ESG for small regional banks. They are still not quite familiar with this concept. And furthermore, we would try to introduce the project environmental impact assessment. So we wish to know how much, for example, the CO2 emission have been achieved through a project finance. So all of these calculations would eventually contribute to the PRC's goal for carbon peaking and carbon neutrality, and we will support that. And also, last but not the least, is on the disclosure requirement. And all of these, we would also support the knowledge sharing. So such a benefit, such a modality could be replicated throughout the rest of the PRC. So going forward, we would be guided by the PRC 14th five-year plan and ADB's PRC country partnership strategy to further support green and sustainable finance. And we intend to develop innovative pilot projects, and we try to help support sector and market development. And we would develop institutional and technical capacities. And then overall, we would try to develop knowledge and share. And also we try to leverage these knowledge on the regional platforms, such as with ASEAN, so we can promote a regional cooperation. And then by leveraging PRC's experience to benefit the other countries. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Huang. Next, let's give the floor to Li Jing. Li Jing is from the Sustainability Leader Financial Services of Asia Pacific Partner Climate Change and Sustainability Greater China Ernst & Young. And has sufficient experience in the sustainability and financial services. And he is responsible for the very first the Chinese institution issuing many green bonds and the social responsibility bond and sustainability bond. And for 5 years in a row has been the first in the market. And now she is a technical expert in the national policy and the provincial regulation establishment of green finance and sustainable development, as also a consultant for MEE. So you can see from her resume, she's so experienced, seasoned consultant, and I believe she will bring us a lot of case studies and best practice. So the floor is yours, Madam Li. Thank you, Dr. Liu, for your recognition and introduction. Dear experts, ladies and gentlemen, both online and offline, thank you for the invitation. It's my great honor to attend this forum once again. It's my great pleasure to share some of our view under the context of the 1316 dual target goals, and I will explore the challenges and opportunities facing enterprises. Just now, Dr. Ni have introduced many speakers from the UK, from Chinese regulatory background, and also from introduction of ADB. Next, let me give the practice from Ernst & Young. So the dual carbon target, what's its significance and relevance to businesses? How to seize opportunities in this context of dual carbon targets, and how to handle the stress, rise up to the challenges to achieve high quality development. This is my slides. A few words about carbon neutral. So after Paris Agreement, this is another important commitment. So according to Paris Agreement, we have this 1.5 degrees target. Before the Paris Agreement, we can see these 1.5 to 2 degree are important milestone targets, and major economies and governments have signed Paris Agreement. So for producers, it is a matter of not just the development but also survival, and it also involves financial risks as well as opportunities. So for every company, no matter it's a producer or trader or financial institution, they will have to face the background of a carbon neutral. So President Xi Jinping pledged these 2030 and 16 targets in 2020. And this year, President Xi again pledged China will not support overseas coal-fired power plants anymore. So all these pledges showed the responsibilities of China as a major country, and you can see this is a systematic project. And we heard a lot about the 1+N policy framework yesterday. So for under each target, there will involve like 8 sectors, including financial sectors, which will bring a lot of investment opportunities as well as transition risks to each sector. Carbon peaking and carbon neutral. If we look at these figures, we can see maybe it involves 10 billion tons for China, involves energy, industry, transport, buildings, agriculture, and land use. And it requires enormous fund from 2020 to 2060. It requires 135 trillion RMB, and some experts expect even higher funding gap. And it requires the participation of financial investors and put climate change high on their agenda, and also ask them to support the transition toward low carbon and green development. 16th July this year, Shanghai Stock Exchange opened the fluctuation of the carbon market, and it means we will be more in line with international practice. Currently, the price is about 14.5 to 15 yuan per ton. And if we look at European price, it's about 16 to 70 yuan per ton. And because we have different at a different stage of development, so the price is a bit different. And I believe the price in China will get higher in the future. And China's carbon market will eventually become the largest in the world. And there were a lot of funds from both China and also other countries. And it also provides a variety of financial products.
So the funding could be provided to manufacturers and energy businesses with good low-carbon development potentials. Carbon finance is part and parcel of low-carbon green development. With more and more products offered and developed, we are poised to further improve upon the innovativeness, the reform orientation, and the greater liquidity with regard to the 3 key functions and the 5 pillars. Now, let's go to practice after talking about theories. We divide the businesses into 2 categories. First, from the perspective of investors, what are the challenges with regard to the 3060 target? So the first category consists of financial institutions because they need to provide funding to the 3060 target. The second category refers to manufacturing companies, whether they are restricted or incentivized by the 3060 target. What are their challenges and opportunities? For financial institutions, we have 5 recommendations. Let me go through them one by one. So for financial institutions, although financial institutions are not licensed emitters, due to a large number of employees, branch organizations, and their captive buildings and data centers, including our computing resources, they are quite big emitters, especially in the tertiary industry. So financial institutions themselves need to be carbon neutral. So they need to establish a baseline information about their emission. What about their Category 1 emission, Category 2 emission? Some global financial institutions will also cover business travels, referred to as Category 3, for carbon emission accounting. So what about the average emission by financial institutions as investors. According to our past experience, the per capita emission by financial institutions without any abatement measures ranges from 6 to 9 tons per capita. So 6 to 9 tons per capita multiplied by tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in their employee base, that's a lot. So we need to provide more accurate accounting into emission by the financial institutions themselves so that we could reduce emission. And second, as low-carbon investors themselves, financial institutions should play the role of should be role models themselves. Recommendation number 2, financial institutions should play the part of institutional investors to encourage green finance product innovation. According to Secretary Xu, he has mentioned different categories of green finance products. For the 13th five-year plan, there were a lot of green credit, green bond, green fund, green insurance, green trust, and ESG investment products. In China's capital market, in particular, dominated by banks, insurers, and investment funds, green products played a very big part. We are number 1 in green credit and number 2 in green bonds globally. During the 14th five-year plan and even by 2060, green finance products must feature greater innovations in addition to traditional green credit and green bonds. We need more products that are industry vertical specific, catering to the needs of the business community, featuring innovations. For example, for some projects with accurate accounting of carbon emission effectiveness, we can offer carbon neutrality bonds. And also, we can gear investment towards renewable energy, green building, and other low-carbon industries after the carbon emission could be quantified in accounting with accounting measures. That could be very innovative. Last week, we held CBD COP15 in Kunming. So the biodiversity is a very good theme to develop bond and credit products. One of the biggest banks in September offered the first biodiversity green bond in the world, aimed to protect diversity of species, environmental protection, marine, wetland, and forest protection, so on and so forth. So we're using a financial instrument to advance biodiversity protection, which is very good innovation. And most of the green finance is to support green industries. But in order for us to attain 30-60 target, we need more investment in traditional carbon-intensive industries. For those traditional industries, how can we provide better support for them? We have transitional finance, which means we are giving financial products and instruments to those power generation, metallurgy, paper and pulp, aviation, iron, steel, and a total of 8 heavy emitters, helping them go through industrial transformation. With such transformation, a lot of emission can be reduced, such as residual heat power generation, cogeneration, and residual heat utilization by steelworks, and so on and so forth. So with those investments, financial institutions can offer assistance to transitions for traditional industries. There could be a lot more other innovations. The rejuvenation of the rural economy is a very big investment theme in China. So for the rejuvenation of the rural economy, we could look at distributed rooftop PV deployments in the countryside and industrial parks with a concentration of SMEs, as well as renewable energy products and bonds linked with sustainability performance. In this way, more jobs will be created, there will be greater enrollment into schools, and there will be greater gender equality as well. So those innovative products will help rejuvenate the rural economy while helping reduce carbon emission. Recommendation number 3, we need to better manage risk exposure. Climate risk is a direct risk divided into physical risk and transitional risk. We have gone through a host of extreme weather events, such as in Zhengzhou of Henan province and the torrential rain in Shanxi province as well, resulting in flooding disasters. They are examples of climate change. For financial institutions, they are also financial risks. What about the transitional risk? It is reflected in policies, products, technology enhancement, and the changing consumer preferences. A typical example is as follows. If financial institutions make a lot of investments in carbon-intensive cement and iron steel industries, most of those companies are SOEs. In the future, are they going to meet their emission targets according to the MEE and other regulatory requirements? If they don't meet their targets, they need to purchase additional quota, giving rise to higher cost of manufacturing, which means their debt service capabilities will worsen. Then the probability of default, PD, or even the NPL ratio for financial institutions will rise. So for the 8 heavily emitting industries, we need to calculate climate risk for them. We need to run stress testing with regard to different risk scenarios, and in the context of different companies and industries, whether the stress is big or small, and how resilient they are against such stress. If the result is not good, does it mean the banks or financial institutions will change their propensity to make loans to those companies? So therefore, the financial institutions need to do a better job with pre-loan and the loan application examination and post-loan management ahead of the curve. Recommendation number 4. Within the investment portfolio of financial institutions, each financial institution needs to check its carbon footprint. For commercial banks and Social Security Fund, they have a huge investment portfolios covering brown industries, which are carbon intensive, gray industries, such as trade, financial service institutions, and service industries without much emission, and green category. So green, brown, and gray. So for each investment portfolio, the carbon footprint shall be calculated. A good investment or portfolio manager should maintain a controllable carbon intensity level, making it drop year by year, which is preferred. Many international fund managers and commercial banks, starting from last year, started to disclose their carbon footprint in their investment portfolio so that their investors could see that those financial institutions are ready for the climate risk, and they are ready to readjust their investment portfolio and strategies going forward in order to be compliant with regulatory requirements, as well as to obtain additional opportunities in environmentally friendly related projects. Recommendation number 5, we've got to strengthen ESG information management and disclosure. And in increasing number of when investors look at a company, whether he or she will invest in it or not, they will look at the balance sheet and income statement, but they will look at the mid to long-term development potential. One KPI is whether this company can deliver on its ESG responsibilities well or not. What about its ESG performance? If ESG rating is not good, for many fund investors, they will exclude such projects from a whitelisting of their investment decision. They tend to draw a red line at a certain score of ESG. If a company has a lower score, it will be excluded from the asset portfolio of certain asset managers. We have a TCFD guideline with regard to climate-specific financial disclosure. In this context, enhancing ESG capability is all the more important than ever. There should be an ESG officer or ESG specific board member in the company. So both in this way, both financial and non-financial KPIs of a company will improve. And that could help galvanize more and more investment at home and abroad into the green investments. And in this way, the funds or the fund managers will be able to attract more and more responsible investors, both at home and abroad. That's a very important direction going forward, the strengthening of ESG information management and disclosure. Well, I've shared with you our suggestions for financial institutions. Now I want to say a few words about what we have to say for manufacturers, licensed emitters, and the manufacturing industries in general with regard to the 3060 target. How can they grasp the opportunities associated with green? Recommendation number one for the manufacturing sector. They must do carbon emission accounting, especially for companies from those 8 carbon-intensive factors with tighter regulation. They need to accurately, in a timely way, and precisely carry out carbon accounting to identify their key sources of emission and the quantities of emission and industrial processes generating the emission. With this baseline information established, each company should establish a timeline towards carbon peaking and carbon neutrality. The national target is 3060, but different industry and different companies have their own agendas. For petrochemical industry, they will achieve carbon peaking and carbon neutrality sooner than the national target. And for some large-sized SOEs, they have also come up with their own timetables of peaking and neutrality. But those targets are based on crystal clear understanding of their emission because they know at which steps they can reduce emission, at which processes they can replace fossil energy with renewable energy. So for the emission-controlled companies and licensed emitters and other manufacturing companies, they need to use PAS 2060 and ISO 14064 to establish a baseline information of their carbon emission so as to work out a roadmap towards peaking and neutrality. Recommendation number 2, after establishing the baseline information or accounting, you've got to establish your roadmap or blueprint of implementation in different industries and different types of companies due to different production technologies and processes. The starting point is different, therefore targets will be set differently. We need to set targets in a very precise way. We should not be too radical, but also we need to drive further innovations in the production process. For example, for some of the key international organizations and agencies, they have established like a science-based reduction target and other science-based approaches. We can learn from those approaches. Recommendation number 3, when we establish our carbon emission roadmaps, we need to have very specific timetables. For example, for companies with controlled emission, we can use more renewable energy. For licensed emitters, they can drive further energy efficiency and reduction measures. Recommendation number 5, we suggest companies should establish a supply chain management system across the entire value chain. For manufacturing companies, they should reduce carbon emission not only by themselves, but also by their supply chain. Let me give you an example. For a wind farm is a green industry. But for the wind turbine manufacturers, in terms of manufacturing, packaging, and transportation, every activity is an emitting activity. So you've got to make sure that your upstream suppliers and downstream customers should make commitments towards carbon emission reduction so as to achieve carbon neutrality across the entire supply chain and value chain. That's one of the future directions. Well, let me spend a few minutes talking about Ernest Young and our climate change and sustainability service team. On green finance, on carbon neutrality, we've done a lot of work, including all types of green bonds, credit, fund, insurance, and other green finance products, as well as neutrality, carbon neutrality roadmaps and implementation blueprint. We've provided support to many financial institutions and manufacturing companies with regard to accounting, timetables, and roadmaps. We look forward to leverage the forum today to talk to more of you online and offline, so that in the future we can leverage our expertise to assist in greater progress along the path towards 3060 targets. Thank you very much. Thank you, Judy Lee, for your very detailed presentation. So from her presentation, we could learn a lot in a practical way for financial institutions, for manufacturing companies as well. Next, let me invite Javier Esmera from Asian Development Bank, another ADB expert, to talk about the policy framework and the policy framework of ADB on green finance. Now, she is working on it's a joint ADB working group on tracking climate finance. It's also implementing technical assistance for numerous developing countries in order for capacity building on climate finance. She has a rich set of experience working with ADB. At ADB, we were also colleagues for over a decade. Now the floor is yours, Ms. Esmera.
Dr. Liu, I hope you can hear me okay. Dr. Liu is a beloved colleague, so it's quite exciting to actually see you even virtually. I'm putting up my screen. So thank you for your invitation to this forum. So I'm going to go through ADB's efforts and initiatives in addressing climate change challenge in the Asia and Pacific region. So this particular presentation is divided into 4 sections. One is on ADB strategies and policies. One is on adaptation and resilience. The other one is on how ADB is implementing or helping implement the goals of the Paris Agreement. And of course, on climate finance, which would include discussions on carbon markets and some upcoming new funds. So in 2018, ADB adopted its long-term strategy for 2030. There are 7 operational priorities, and one of which is on tackling climate change, building climate and disaster resilience, and enhancing environmental sustainability. So embedded in this strategy is a commitment or a target that at least 75% of our number of committed operations will support climate change mitigation and adaptation by 2030, and that our climate finance cumulatively from 2019 to 2030 will reach 80 billion. As part of our corporate results framework in 2024, we've also set midterm targets of 65% in terms of committed operation and 35 billion by 2024. So operationalizing this priority actually entails working in several sectors. This includes energy, transport, urban development, climate smart agriculture, sustainable land use, among others. Now, ADB, especially our management, is quite committed in providing support amidst COVID recovery by our client countries. So under our President's planning directions for 2021 and in the next 2 years, one of the 3 key operational directions includes supporting a green, resilient, and inclusive recovery, where ADB will actually mainstream climate and disaster resilience into its support for sectors and teams that have suffered in the current pandemic. Now, we define GRIR as a supporting development that is nature positive, socially inclusive, builds long-term resilience, and is aligned with various international frameworks and conventions. In July 2021, our President's vision statement actually included a new target for adaptation finance, which is to reach a cumulative financing of 9 billion from 2019 to 2024. This is double the average of our adaptation finance from 2015 to 2018. ADB also committed to aligning with the Paris Agreement for our sovereign operations in 2023 and non-sovereign operations by 2025. Some of you may have also heard early last week that our president has announced that in addition to the 80 billion target, we are raising that ambition to 100 billion. So the 20 billion additional climate finance is something that ADB has to work on and will be focusing on these 5 main areas. One is, exploring new avenues for climate mitigation. So this includes investment in low-hanging fruits like energy efficiency, but also in new technologies from battery storage and hydrogen. We are also planning to scale up transformative adaptation projects, meaning we are also looking into non-infrastructure or non-traditional projects, looking into health, education, as well as social protection as key drivers for scaling up adaptation. We are, of course, acknowledging the fact that private sector plays a key role in climate finance investment. So we are providing additional support for that. We, of course, as part of our operational priority, supporting green, resilient, and inclusive recovery from COVID-19. And lastly, we are actually accelerating support to advance reforms in DNCs. This particular bit actually pertains to what Dr. Angkan said earlier about policy-based loans as well as result-based lendings. So the graph here actually shows ADB's current projection in terms of climate finance, which actually projects that we will reach our 2024 target of 35 billion in climate finance. Now, in terms of enhancing adaptation and resilience in the Pacific and Asia, we are actually employing a holistic approach, which means that we go beyond physical resilience, which is often associated to climate-proofing infrastructure. So we are also looking into enhancing ecological resilience through nature-based solutions, financial resilience in terms of enhancing financial preparedness of our countries to the changing climate, as well as social and institutional resilience. This is actually a framework and part of the operational plan for operational priority 3 of ADB on climate. ADB was actually the first multilateral development bank to institutionalize a climate risk management framework in 2014. This has mandated all our sovereign projects to actually screen climate risk. Those that have actually medium or high risk must actually undertake a climate risk and adaptation assessment, from which will produce measures that can be used to address this climate risk or lower them, and at the same time, the associated cost for this risk. And of course, this associated cost becomes the climate change adaptation finance. As said earlier, under our President vision, we are trying to increase adaptation finance by 2024, and overall the additional 20 billion to 2030, we are going to actually try to meet that by adjusting some of by going beyond business as usual. So one is that we plan to strengthen upstream engagement on adaptation. So on the country or client side, we plan to actually engage in providing support in terms of the national adaptation process and other policies, as well as internally in ADB through our country partnership strategies and programming. We are also scaling up support for climate adaptation projects in high-risk sectors, which are often agriculture and natural resources and water. We are also expanding adaptation in non-infrastructure sectors, which I have mentioned earlier, that could be identifying opportunities in social protection, TVET or education, and health programs. We have also established under our Asian Development Fund Replenishment 13 a thematic pool that will actually address disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. Around 40% of the share of this thematic pool will actually be set aside specifically for disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation projects. ADB also has committed to align its operations to the Paris Agreement. Now, the framework and the approach that we are using internally in determining alignment with the Paris Agreement has been developed by the Joint Multilateral Development Bank's Working Group on Paris Alignment. So the group has actually came out with 6 building blocks. First building blocks is actually aligning with mitigation goals, meaning that our projects are actually contributing to low emissions development pathways. Building block 2 is actually adaptation and climate resilient operation, meaning that we not only climate proof, but we ensure that the project address climate risk, if any. Of course, building block 3, an important component is climate finance, which of course ADB is doing by furthering climate finance access as well as facilitating climate finance to our client countries. 4 is about strategy, engagement, and policy development. This is more on overarching plans and strategies and policies for our developing member countries. And of course, once we have committed something, we have to also report it for transparency. So building block 5 is on reporting. So we are currently developing tools in ADB as well as the MDB group and methods that we can report and monitor our Paris-aligned activities. Projects are also not just enough to be Paris-aligned, but ADB's own internal activities has to also be Paris-aligned. So that is building block 6. So currently, for example, ADB headquarters in Manila is actually harnessing power from solar energy. We are also harvesting rainwater and recycling them. So we are also offsetting our annual meetings through carbon offsetting or CERs that we have been buying. So those are some of our initiatives to actually align our own activities in contributing to net zero emissions. So overall, in achieving Paris Agreement or alignment with the Paris Agreement, we are providing several support to several countries. One of them is actually the NDC Advanced Platform or the National Determined Contribution, as many of us already know. So it's a dedicated technical assistance that supports our client countries to translate NDC commitments into implementation plan, also mobilize finance to support the implementation, and including innovative mechanisms for our countries. And of course, we are also developing monitoring, reporting, and verification system to track and report progress and achievement means under the NDC. We are also providing, through a small technical assistance, long-term support, long-term strategy support. We are not necessarily supporting the development of the LTS, but enabling a development action plan to ensure that the LTS being developed is something that will help the country reach their long-term strategy goals. Currently, in the Asian Pacific region, around 25 BMCs have committed to net zero by 2050. And as you all know, together with, I think, Tajikistan, PRC has committed to net zero by 2060. However, so far to date, only 3 of our developing member countries have actually submitted their LTS, which includes Fiji, Indonesia, and the Marshall Islands. We are also providing support for just transition. We recognize the importance of the impact on people that large-scale transitions required in terms of addressing climate change may entail. So this would look at environmental sustainability, decent workplace, social inclusion, and overall poverty eradication. There is also another working group from the MDBs that have actually developed common principles for just transition, which will be launched at COP26 in a week's time. And of course, climate finance is an important aspect in addressing, climate change challenges in the region. We do employ a 3-prong approach in addition to the usual commercial loans. We deploy concessional resources, maximize the market mechanism, as well as catalyze private capital. Now, in terms of deploying concessional resources, I just wanted to highlight the Climate Change Fund, because in addition to our bilateral and multilateral funds, Climate Change Fund is actually funded by ADB's own net resources. We also have access to multilateral funds, including the Climate Investment Fund, Global Environmental Facility, and of course the Green Climate Fund. Now, in terms of market mechanism, we do provide support in carbon markets in general, which I will talk more in the next slide. But just to highlight, we also support green and climate bonds. As of September 10, ADB made a maiden issuance on blue bonds amounting to around 300 million. So green, blue, and climate bonds is now included in ADB's portfolio. But in addition to ADB actually issuing our own bonds, we are also investing in countries on green bond. For example, in Thailand, we invested 95 million, or basically we bought 95 million of green bonds for an energy wind power project. In addition to us issuing and supporting countries to issue there, we actually also provide technical support. For example, the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility has actually provided technical support to Thailand, among others, in the ASEAN region in terms of helping the countries develop their own framework in issuing climate and green bonds. And for catalyzing private sector, of course, in addition to direct project finance using various instruments, including guarantees and syndications, we are also working with public and private partnerships. There are also, of course, facilities available for the private sector to access in terms of the Canadian Climate Fund, Australian Climate Finance Partnership, and the ADB Ventures Financing Partnership Facility. The venture facility is actually funded by the climate investment funds. ADB has an access of around 2.86 billion from CIP, 48.75% of which is already being administered by ADB. Now, for Green Climate Fund, ADB was the first MDB, but as well as one of the first batches to get accreditation as an implementing agency. So it is supported by 49 state governments and has so far committed 10 billion to 190 projects globally. For ADB, we have access to 946 million to date. This is providing support for 11 countries, plus 2 regional programs in the Pacific and as well as in the ASEAN. The first PRC project that has been approved by the Green Climate Fund is actually the Shandong Green Development Fund project, which I will no longer go into because Dr. Amkan has actually mentioned this earlier. So moving on to ADB's carbon market program. So we provide access to finance as well as access to technical support. Future Carbon Fund, which is more or less wrapping up, have actually providing upfront financing for CDM or Clean Development Mechanism projects by purchasing post-2012 CERs. The Japan Fund for the Joint Crediting Mechanism, which actually commenced in 2014 in ADB, also provides grants to advance low-carbon technologies in DMC and ADB's clients. Article 6 support facility actually specifically provides technical assistance and capacity building to our developing member countries to prepare each one of the countries in participating in the new carbon markets under the framework of Article 6. And of course, the technical support facility, who has always been there since 2006, continues to provide technical and capacity building support for mitigation access through carbon markets. We have also a recently approved TA this year, which promotes the life cycle management of fluorocarbons. It is a small TA of around 750,000. This is actually my last slide, but this Community Resilience Financing Partnership Facility is actually a facility that will support enhancing climate resilient investments in the country. Just to go back to the carbon market, I have forgotten that we are actually launching a new fund during COP26. It's called the Climate Action Catalyst Fund. So this particular fund will actually facilitate climate finance to support mitigation actions and provide sustainable development support to our member countries. So it is envisioned to be a 100 million climate fund. And one of the other facilities that will also be launched at COP26 is the Community Resilience Financing Partnership Facility. This should be around 75 million. It is unique in a way that we plan to scale up resilient investments that explicitly tackles the nexus between poverty, gender, and climate risk. So this actually supports 6 of the 7 operational priorities of ADB, and that we are currently in talks with several governments, including the UK, as well as the NDF, on funding the facility. So overall, thank you again for having me in this forum, and this just gives you a quick synopsis of what ADB is doing in terms of addressing the climate change challenge in the Asia and Pacific region.
Thank you, Ismail. A very detailed introduction. 他刚才讲这个介绍。
Well, then, she has talked to us about the overall framework of ADB's work on climate change. That has shed a lot of light on us on how and what ADB is doing in promoting and assisting low-carbon green development. Now, last but not the least, let me invite Head of Strategy and Planning of HSBC China, Anthony de Guillebon, and he's a very good Chinese name, Gao An. Head of Strategy and Planning, HSBC. He's a banker with abundant experience. And he has also worked with the investment arm of HSBC. He used to work with PwC and other financial institutions. Antonio, please.
I will speak in English for the sake of everyone. Thank you very much to the organizers of this fantastic conference, to the government of Hunan province, and to the Asia Development Bank. I'm very impressed by the organization and by the quality of the presentations that I've heard so far. And thank you very much, Lu Shuidu, Professor Lu, for the kind introduction and moderating this workshop. So by way of introduction, I'm Antoine de Guillemot. It's a very French name, working for a very global company with deep roots in the UK, but also obviously in Asia. Since green finance emerged in 2016, impressive progress has been made in China in setting standards, in piloting local projects, in green financial markets, and in product innovation. And really, I must say, China has become a world leader when it comes to green finance developments. I've been here for 2 years now, so not very long, but I'm impressed by the speed at which China has grown in this field. However, I think challenges remain. We've seen in the recent power crunch that cutting coal production alone will not be enough to help achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. Much more needs to be done. A few numbers that I've collected left and right. The International Energy Agency estimates that China needs to expand the capacity of wind power 9 times and solar power 7 times by 2060, while at the same time reducing coal usage by 80%. Similarly, HSBC Research just published a research paper where it estimates that close to 200 trillion RMB will be needed to be invested to reach carbon neutrality by 2060 in China alone. So the challenge is huge. And quite clearly, the government, the China government, will not be able to do this alone. There will be an increasing reliance on the private sector to win this challenge. And in this challenge, obviously, finance has a critical role to play. And what I propose to do today is to walk you through and to present to you what HSBC will be doing globally and in China in the years to come to meet this challenge. So hopefully the presentation on screen is in Chinese to support this. Let me see how it works. Oops, sorry. Yes. Okay. HSBC has been very clear on its commitments to sustainability. We want to be a leading institution when it comes to our contribution to a sustainable future. We recognize that finance has a critical role to play in creating sustainable growth. We are obviously one of the largest financial institutions in the world, and we really want to lead and play our part in creating this sustainable growth. So earlier this year, we've made, at group level, we've made several commitments on our sustainable strategy. 3 commitments that are very, very clear. The first commitment is HSBC will be net zero by 2050. Second commitment is to support our customers on their journey to sustainability. And the third commitment is to play an active role in creating new climate solutions for our customers. So what does it mean clearly? It means on the first commitment, it means that we will be net zero by 2050, so 10 years earlier than China, in supporting our customers. so in our finance portfolios. But in our own operations, we're aiming to be at net zero by 2030. The second commitment, which consists in helping customers in their journey to transition, we have allocated between $750 billion and $1 trillion of financing, both in lending and in investments, to support our customers. And the third commitment around climate solutions consists essentially in investing in new funds, new investment funds, that will create new opportunities. So what have we done globally and in China so far? So in the first commitment, quite clearly, which obviously relates to becoming a net zero bank, we have set clear and measurable pathways to net zero that align with the Paris Agreement. We've joined leading industry initiatives to ensure that we align with international best practices. And we provide full transparency on our own commitments in line with the TCFD disclosures, and that you can read in our financial statements. With regards to the second commitment, supporting our customers, we maintain market leadership when it comes to underwriting GSS bonds. We've been awarded by the Euromoney magazine the best bank of sustainable financing globally, but also in Asia and in the Middle East. We increase our financing for transition. And for example, we've provided close to $84 billion of sustainable finance since 2020. And we constantly build new capabilities and new products that will support our customers. And then when it comes to the third priority, unlocking new climate solutions, we've created with an asset management company, HSBC Pollination Climate Asset Management. And we're commencing, even though the announcement was done only this year, we're commencing to pre-market 2 natural capital investment funds. We've launched a partnership with WWF and the World Resources Institute, a climate solutions partnership, and we're enabling clean tech investments and philanthropic programs around the world. Last but not least, we're taking a leading role in creating a label called Fast Infra, which consists basically of creating a world-recognized label on infrastructure investments to give security to investors. Now, in China, we're not just waiting for group to tell us what to do. We're taking the lead in China simply because the market is so fast and so ambitious. So in China, in HSBC, we've put in place a full governance organization that is led directly by our country CEO. We are innovating with new products for our customers, and a few examples, just to give a few examples are green deposits. We're the first foreign bank to propose green deposits to our corporate customers, so that, when corporate customers deposit money in those deposits, those funds are used for green purposes. We have launched the first carbon credit-backed facilities, meaning we lend money to customers guaranteed, collateralized by green credits, leveraging off the carbon credit market. And we are leading with the sustainable supply chain financing solutions for our customers who want to involve their own suppliers when it comes to financing. And last but not least, we really play an active role in thought leadership, both internally within our organization and externally on the market with our customers. We organize many trainings to bring Well, first of all, I think it's to bring our own staff to the level of knowledge that is required so that they can have, thorough discussions with customers when it comes to green, because it's a new topic for many, but also bringing our customers up to speed on the green topic. So the main challenge we have is related to, and it's a challenge that we have in the bank, in HSBC, but in the banking sector in general, is how are we going to change our operations in order to meet the 1.5 degrees target by 2050. You see here on this graph that with the line in red, basically, if nothing is done, if no policies were applied, we would be at 3.6 degrees. Basically, this is the carbon emissions that would lead to 3.6 degrees by 2050. The challenge is obviously to reduce the carbon emissions to reach 1.5 degrees by 2050. And this is the green line. And so the question is, how will banks be able to accompany their customers in order to reach this 1.5 degrees target? Now, yesterday, the Financial Services Task Force, which is chaired by the HSBC CEO, Noel Quinn, released a practitioner's guide to shift banks from net zero commitments. So, many banks have committed to net zero, but to shift those commitments on net zero to real actions. So how will banks be able to transfer their commitments into real actions and align their portfolio to the path of net zero? And there are 5 steps that we have summarized here that will help banks, not individually, but as a group of international banks, to reach this target of 1.5 degrees. So first of all, it consists of setting an overall ambition, then understanding a reference pathway to 1.5 degrees, and then putting in place what we call a target glide path, which will force the banks to follow the pathway to 1.5 degrees, and then bridge eventually any gap that there may be year after year. This, obviously, if it works, oops, sorry, I'm not very good at this. Yes. This will lead to do this, we need to focus initially on the sectors that we cover. Because obviously, as banks, and as global banks in particular, we cover many different sectors in many different geographies. So the approach we're taking is an approach by sector. And so here you see on this slide, the focus we will have is sector by sector, look at the whole value chain of each sector, and determine which component of the value chain has the most material contribution to climate change. Now we've started identifying the sectors listed here as a priority, and if we take, for example, the first 2, energy and power and utilities, which we know are 2 key sectors in China, for example. If we take the value chain of those sectors, we have identified the sectors, the elements in red as key priorities when it comes to reducing greenhouse gases. So in the energy sector, for example, all the upstream and the integrated and diversified activities are key contribution to greenhouse gases emissions and need to be addressed in particular. With regards to power and utilities, again, all the upstream activity is essential, is a priority to be addressed because they are the most contributing to greenhouse gases. And so on and so forth with the other sectors listed here. Now, obviously, I don't know where's the, yeah. Obviously, this will lead to massive changes in the banking activity itself. We see three big changes for the banking activity. You see on the right-hand side of this slide an illustration of the changes that will happen to certain sectors that we serve. This is taken from the study of the International Energy Agency, where we see between 2019 and 2050 the change in the energy supply mix and the electricity and heat sectors, where basically in 2019 we were obviously massively relying on coal and oil, and by 2050 it is estimated that energy supply will massively come from renewables. So this will have a massive change on the way banks operate, and HSBC as well. We see three impacts. One, sector transition. The sectors, such as energy, will change massively between today and 2050. This will impact the way we address those sectors. We've seen the energy sector, but all the other sectors will be impacted as well. We will be dependent, as banks, we will be dependent on how our customers change and how fast they change. We position climate at the forefront of our client engagement, and it's important for us to not only understand how clients will address the issue, but accompany our clients in this transition. But then, third impact, it will clearly change, and it will clearly bring new business opportunities for banks with a significant reallocation of capital within and across sectors, and also the creation of new products and solutions for our customers. So clearly the bank we have today will be completely different in 2050 as a result of this. Now, I'd like to spend a few minutes to walk you through the products that we have globally and in China to support our customers in this transition. I would like to highlight So it's going to go fast all of a sudden. I don't know where's the... Does it work? Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So while complying with the local China standards, HSBC can also achieve compliance with international green credit standards. And I'd like to highlight 4 products that we offer to our customers. We offer green loans, sustainability-linked loans, sustainable supply chain, and green bonds. I'll spend a few minutes to walk you through on the characteristics of each one of those products. Next slide. Okay. Green loans. Yeah, okay. Green loans. Green loans are essentially, so the green loans are a reference to the green loan principles that have been accepted globally. They are designed to finance green projects. 4 important pillars here to be respected. 1, the use of proceeds. The proceeds from the green loans must be used for green projects. The projects must be properly evaluated and the environmental, and meet clear environmental objectives. The proceeds must be managed in a transparent way, and a reporting needs to be done on an annual basis. On the right, I give a list of the green loan projects that we finance currently. The next product I would like to talk about is sustainability-linked loans. So sustainability-linked loans is not specific to green projects, but more to support environmentally and socially sustainable projects. So it's a wider remit this time. Again, here we have 4 pillars, which are very similar to the green loans that we listed before. The borrower needs to have a clear ESG strategy. It needs to set targets that are measurable. It needs to report on progress of the use of those funds. And there needs to be an independent review that confirms the use of those facilities. Next slide. Supply chain financing. Next slide, please. Yes. Supply chain financing. So this is, again, this is something we are doing in China. The intention of supply chain financing is to support our customers to mobilize their own supplier base and to lead their suppliers to become more sustainable. So the objectives are very simple. Implement sustainable procurement standard to encourage change, strengthen our customers' supply chain sustainability and reduce their footprint, and enhance sustainability strategy and credentials. Okay. And last but not least, I would like to quickly run you through the green bonds. Yes, thank you. Green bonds. So HSBC is a market leader when it comes to green bonds. There are 3 types of green bonds, and there are the green bonds that finance green projects, specific green projects. There are the sustainability bonds that finance, sustainable and social projects, and we have social bonds that will finance social projects. The green bonds, examples of green bonds are given here. So it's to finance renewable energy, energy efficiency, and so on and so forth. Sustainability bonds are more for renewable projects in SMEs, for example, or clean public transport. And social bonds are more to address, projects that impact society, such as clean water, sewers, and so on and so forth. Again, we find the 4 pillars that are important to take into account when using those green bonds. We find the concept of use of proceeds. The proceeds need to be used for green purposes. There needs to be an evaluation of the use of proceeds, and there needs to be a proper reporting of those proceeds. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Thank you for the presentation. Due to limited time, sorry, we don't have enough time for you to give us a more detailed introduction about the work of HSBC. Apologize for poor timing as a moderator because all the speakers have given us a very inspirational presentation. Now we have to skip tea break. Let's move directly to the next session. But you are free to get some refreshment and bring it inside because we do provide food for thought inside our conference hall. Next, the moderator will be Wu Xintao, Head of Executive Office, Hunan Caixin Financial. So I think I'm relieved. So as I mentioned, Mr. Wu Xintao is the Head of Executive Office from Hunan Caixin Financial, and he will be the moderator of the next session. Hunan Caixin Financial has deep pocket in Hunan, and also with experienced practice in this province. So the floor is yours, Mr. Wu. Dear experts, participants online, offline, I'm from Hunan Caixin Financial. It's my honor to moderate the second session. I'm humbled and a bit nervous. I'm humbled because we have a lot of distinguished experts present here, especially Dr. Lu. But I'm also confident because Hunan Caixin Financial is one of the co-organizers of the forum and has done a lot of exploration in terms of green finance. So we hope to offer some of our thought on this topic. So let me introduce the two experts for case sharing. First is Yuan Chuang, General Manager of R&D Center in Caixin Securities. He's a PhD in economics and has more than 10 years experience on financial fields. His expertise in the fields of macroeconomics, asset allocation, financial innovation, and the innovative projects he participated have won provincial awards. Honorable leaders, experts, it's my great pleasure to brief you on the development and case studies of green finance in the financial capital from the perspective of Hunan Caixin Financial. Due to limited time, let me quickly go over the background. So this information has been repeated a lot of times in the past 2 days. President Xi Jinping pledged the 2030 and 2030 goals last year. And we all know green finance and the dual target goal entails restructuring of energy mix, industrial restructuring, and also adjustment of global governance system and the financial system. Especially when we are in this century of changes unseen in the past century, and we need to face major challenges and risks. So finance needs to support the dual carbon target. In the next decade, the investment gap is about 100 trillion RMB. Mr. Ma Jun gave us a keynote presentation today, and according to his projection, it could be 400 trillion RMB. So it's an uphill journey, and we have a lot of responsibilities. As for the global governance, previous speakers have shared their experience from different perspectives. In terms of capital market, I believe there are 3 aspects. First, strengthen the climate-related information disclosure. The businesses, together as financial institutions, need to disclose climate-related information. Some of the companies and institutions have already done that. Second is innovation of green products, involves green bond, climate bond, etc. And third is green investment, or SLL. We need to encourage the investors. And actually, this is proposed by the former UN Secretary General. Now, in terms of green bond, the core is how to use the proceeds. It has to be used on green projects, including clean transport, clean energy, etc. Second is the evaluation screening. So you cannot just claim you are green. You need to be evaluated by a established process. And when we're talking about the UNPRI, and we have different definitions in the narrow sense and also in the broad sense. So in the broad sense, it involves 6 principles. The first is ESG. The core is that when you introduce a asset portfolio, the bottom line, the asset, and the target need to be green. And it need have good ESG indicators. It need have good governance. So different from traditional portfolio, the green portfolio will focus on whether they are green or not. If they are not, need to be eliminated, deleted, removed from this investment, and need to score it. And then you select the top runners, top rankers. These are some simple introduction about UNPRI. Since last century, including advanced economies like USA and EU, they have established green finance systems, including the mechanism, the networks, and frameworks. Let me skip this slide. So this slide is about capital market. First, we saw rapid development of green bond since 2014. Actually, between 2014 and 2020, green bond grew by almost 8 times, mainly in Europe, North America, and Asia Pacific region. China, in terms of scale, ranks number 2 in the world. So a previous speaker mentioned the scale of green credit of China is now number 1 in the world. Secondly, we saw stable increase of green investment. By the beginning of 2020, the total investment from EU, USA, Canada, Japan, and Australia and New Zealand are the front runners by that order. As for China, starting 2015, PBOC issued the Green Bond Endorsed Project Catalog. And in the past years, we have been optimizing these regulations and catalogs and more in line with international practice. So as I mentioned earlier, China is the second largest issuer of green bond. Green bond have to follow international standards. So for all the green labeled bond, China is number 2. But if CBI qualified bond, actually China is number 4. Starting from 2015, when we issued 2 green bonds, between 2016 to 2018, there was a steady growth, and between 2019 to 2021, there was a rapid growth because there were more local governments participating in this drive. In terms of the categories, most of them are local government single product. And actually, we covered all the categories in China. In terms of interest rate, currently is between 3% and 6%. The main reason is that the issuers are mainly high-rating large institutions instead of medium and small institutions. And green ABS is growing fast in China. ABS had a rapid development starting from 2013 and in the international market, and so is in China. In green investment, we all know it covers the primary and secondary markets. From primary market, Chinese government is encouraging the Green Industry Fund. And last year, the foundation have absorbed 18 billion RMB, which included the local governments along the Yangtze River Delta. And also, there are provincial green industry foundation, including Guangdong Province and Hunan Province. And from the primary capital market, we saw that fund related to energy, saving, and green industries, it have done a very good job in IPO and recapitalization, refinancing, and also the great enthusiasm from the private investors. On the secondary market, we can see in recent years, ESG-related indicator products are increasing. And I believe in the future there will be more mutual funds focused on this sector, and the scale is bound to increase. We can also see that from last year, carbon target-related industries have seen increasing capitalization, not just in China but also USA. We all know Tesla is the EV leader globally. Its capitalization is 818 billion USD. The traditional giant GM is only 85 billion US dollars. It's a huge gap. And you can see EV is like 10 times higher than the traditional motor vehicles. So I think it's because of the enthusiasm from green investment. So it's in China. Take PV, for example.
Well, the total market cap is 480 billion RMB yuan. For CNPC, it has a total market cap of 1.01 trillion RMB yuan. So, traditional energy companies are highest capitalized according to this comparison. However, if you take compare and contrast between PV and Petro China, the biggest gap used to be 1 against 900, which means the market cap of CNPC was once 900 times, 900x that of LONGi, but now it's very close. We could see that on the IPO market, on the public market, the valuation is going through seismic change. Going forward, for green finance-related products and sectors, there will be a rapid expansion and growth. For green bonds, going forward, the green bond market will further expand. So far, the balance is around 2 trillion RMB yuan of green bond issuance. In the future, we're going to reach 10 trillion RMB yuan. And going forward, our standards of green bonds have by and large converged to international practice. And in the future, there will be greater disclosure, even third-party monitoring or surveillance requirements. For green asset-backed securitization (ABS), in the future, pricing will be more market-based. Therefore, the liquidity or cash flows generated by those products will be stable and growing in the future. Then there's the foundation for the further expansion of green ABS. And then green investment. For green investment, there will be further expansion for those pre-listing companies and also on the public company. The green companies will enjoy increasingly higher capitalization. Next, I want to talk about carbon trading. We've heard a lot about carbon trading in previous interventions. And carbon trading products will be expanded to linkages with financial markets, including the capital market. That will help mobilize or allocate resources in favor of the attainment of 3060 objectives. Well, let me give you a few examples about Caixin Securities Co. Limited and our green finance project. We are financing our holding company in Hunan province. We have assumed our responsibilities as such. For green bonds, Caixin Securities have taken the lead in Hunan province in the issuance of green bond in 2013. With the absence of a green bond as a concept in China, without any standards, Caixin issued bonds related to the clean up of heavy metal pollution along the Xiangjiang River. And that bond was awarded with a Science Progress Reward. After rolling out our first green bond, we, in 2017, issued a 1.8 billion green corporate bond, ranked among the first group of green bonds in China and also as the first green bond in Hunan province. And last year, we underwrote 1.22 billion RMB of a green bond. And for Caixin Fund Management Co. Limited under Caixin, it has done a lot in participation into Sino-US Green Fund, and on behalf of the provincial government, it participates in National Green Development Fund at 80 billion RMB yuan. Also, it has initiated a fund for the prevention and the cleanup of soil pollution in Hunan province, focused on heavy metal pollution. And working with Sinochem, we have jointly launched a new energy, new materials fund, investing in new materials and new energy. And also, we have acquired an equity stake in a green building business, the Broadway residential engineering company. So in assisting in the attainment of the 3060 targets, Caixin will do our job to assist in the 3060 targets in Hunan province and the rest of the country. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Yuan Chuang. So Caixin Securities is the only state-owned broker-dealer in Hunan province. It accounts for 1/3 of the issuance market. In corporate bond and green bond issuance, it's a major player. Next, let me introduce to you our next speaker, Mr. Zhang Fan. You know, you've been extremely busy for the past couple of days. is founder and chairman of Hunan Innovative Low Carbon Chairman. He's a joint Secretary General for this forum. He's a provincial expert on low carbon development. He's member of provincial CPPCC. He's also advisor to Hunan Normal University. He has focused on climate and finance for the past 15 years. Now, Dr. Zhang Fan, chairman of Hunan Innovative Low Carbon Center, you have the floor. Hello. Well, as one of the co-hosts, I don't think I should directly address the forum, but I think the city perspective is very important for us to achieve 3060 objective. And for the prefecture level cities, they have difficult access to the financing market. That's why I want to take this opportunity to talk about what we have done in Xiangtan, a prefecture level in Hunan province, to share with you some of the solutions. I don't think we are representing state of the art, but at least we are exploring some possible pathways. And for the opening video at the opening ceremony, we got some basic information about Xiangtan, talking about green finance making inroads in Xiangtan. What about the Xiangtan model? How was it created? So, without much ado, in October last year, on the 21st of October last year, 5 ministries in China issued a guidance on climate investment and financing initiatives. And also together with the ADB effort, those two developments converged in October last year. 4 parts of my agenda. First, let me say a few words about what we're doing in Xiangtan. Second, I would talk about the experience from Xiangtan serving as a typical climate investment project. Then I will talk about the involvement of ADB aside from providing a soft loan. What else are they doing to help us? And then I will make some advice on city-level green finance projects. Well, this is a 200 million USD loan project. Yes, in China, we have a lot of similar projects. For this attribute, it's nothing new. Many local governments have already adopted this model. But for this 200 million US dollars, we have earmarked $50 million as a policy-driven loan. That's a combination of a project financing and a policy-driven financing. That's quite innovative. For the policy-driven parts, amounting to 50 million with a repayment period of 15 years and a 3-year grace period. And the project finance amounts to 150 million US dollars with a repayment period of 25 years. For the project investment, there are 16 sub-projects requiring a total investment of 50% of the loan. So with 150 million US dollars of project investment, we have helped bring in another 150 US dollars. So the total size of the project loan amounts to 300 million. And for the 50 million policy loan, the local government has a big leeway and flexibility in the deployment of that fund in promoting low carbon developments in Xiangtan. And the entire project is divided into 6 parts. First, low carbon transportation. We need to make sure that low carbon is a tangible aspect in their day-to-day life, such as in transportation, commuting, and building. So the first system is low carbon transportation, including smart traffic management and the renovation of roads, the multimodal transportation, so and the improvement of the transportation station infrastructure. Second, we are increasing climate resilience of cities. We used to neglect this factor. Talking about climate resilience, we should address not only coastal cities, but also high-risk inland cities, communities, and roads. We have identified a number of high-risk roads, and with early warning and response mechanisms, we have delivered all those findings to the government, which is quite innovative. And the third area is low-carbon building. We have just established a TCM hospital, all based on World Bank standards, financed by ADB. We have adopted World Bank certified green building codes. That's the first project of this kind in China and the rest of Asia, featuring the conservation of water, energy, and building materials in a much more precise and memorable way. And number four, the renovation or the build-up for low-carbon communities. We have identified the 20 communities and streets to update their lighting and heating infrastructure in the interest of energy conservation. Number five, we're putting in place a low-carbon urban management system. Yes, we have some good elements in the hardware, in the infrastructure. For example, for traffic lights and traffic management, the hardware, the infrastructure is quite good in Xiangtan. However, some management practices have room for improvement. For example, for our traffic lights, the traffic lights were designed to alleviate traffic jams as much as possible, to avoid traffic congestions as much as possible. That's the guiding principle for design. And then the ADB experts brought another aspect or a perspective into the design, saying public transportation should be managed in a smart way, and the traffic lighting systems should be designed to facilitate public transportation. It used to be the case that pedestrians will have to wait for vehicles to pass through before they can pass through. So that's why we redesigned the zebra lanes as well as the pedestrian passages, using a state-of-the-art international norm to redefine the traffic management system in Xiangtan, so that more people would like taking public buses or riding bicycles for commuting. And so our government officials, local government officials, have learned a lot from that. Number six, we have put in place a host of policies because we have at our disposal $50 million of a policy-driven loan. We have used that loan to roll out around 20 policy measures. Well, yeah, for those systems, first, the transportation system, we have purchased charging poles and electrified the buses. I will not go to all the details about the low-carbon transportation system. And for the Fuxingzhonglu road, we have renovated the road. We have put in place an early warning system for internal flooding of some urban communities. And for low-carbon buildings and low-carbon communities, the measures are shown on the slide. And a low-carbon management system for the Xiangtan city. As I've highlighted, we have rebalanced the passage rights between motor vehicles and pedestrians. This is the overall policy structure encouraging low-carbon development. There are the following characteristics of the policy system perfectly aligned with this project. The ADB experts had obtained all the previous drafts of the pre-existing policies. They call them a policy baseline. And then after taking a look at the policy baseline, they would identify the gaps with proposed measures in terms of standards and quality and prevailing practices. And then the international experts had given us comments to improve upon those drafts, policies, and regulations. In English, of course. So for those 20-plus measures, they involve road standards as well as energy-based, building-based energy consumption standards. Once they are promulgated as local standards for future building codes, public transit system build-up, those standards have become mandatory. In this way, those policies would sustain instead of being, pushed aside in the future. So if you take a look at our portfolio of policies and projects in the Asia Pacific, the Shanghai project is quite unique and innovative. First, we have used the loan to renovate or revise the transportation system with priority given to public transit. Second, this is the first road project featuring climate resilience. Third, we have deployed the first building project based on World Bank building codes. And the third, next innovation is the combination of a policy loan with a project loan. And also, by leveraging this loan, we have transformed an obsoleted government building into a new green building. And the renovated building has served as the training center, the center of excellence for Asia-Pacific low-carbon development capacity building. So I would like to invite all of you, especially after the pandemic, to visit Xiangtan, to take a look at our projects, take green bus, go to a low-carbon hospital, not as patients, of course. Just go there and take a look. So let's talk about the future of Asia-Pacific low-carbon development in Xiangtan after we have overcome the pandemic. Those are the unique aspects of the Xiangtan model. But we need to go back to the topic of climate and green financing. With this 200 million loan, it is a typical climate loan. Because for this loan, it has a big externality. With climate investment, we're also talking about the externality attribute. Without externality, it cannot be counted as a climate loan. It could be easily equated with other loans. Why it's a climate zone? Why can it enjoy a preferential interest rate? We need to look at this externality element.
So this is a cooperation between Xiangtan government and ADB, and they have designed the positive externality from 4 aspects. So here are the details. First is the externality of the target. Xiangtan City is a national low-carbon pilot city. Starting from 2017, Xiangtan has its own carbon peaking target with a specific timetable and cap. Without such a target, Xiangtan will not be selected by ADB and the Ministry of Finance of PRC as the pilot low-carbon city. And this is not just impulsive from the local government. Actually, it's a well-considered target. Here are some figures and comparison. So my point is that when Xiangtan proposed such a target, it's not easy because it's a old industrial base. It has a Xiangtan iron steel plant under the Hualin Group. It is a high polluting or maybe high consuming plant. And it is located in a downtown area. So this is some previous figure. Its carbon emission per capita in Xiangtan is 1.4 times of Changsha, and these are the figure of 2015 version. So the per capita carbon emission of Xiangtan is on par with Wuhan and Jingcheng of Shanxi province. So when Xiangtan proposed this carbon peaking target, it's by no means easy. And Hunan is not a resource-abundant province. So such a target may have a big negative impact on the regional GDP. So based on existing policy and indicators, we have made some calculation. If based on business as usual, Shanghai will not peak by 2028, not even by 2035. Which means we have an uphill journey and have a lot of work to do. We need to have urgent awareness. The second is the externalities of the project, no matter for policy known or project-based known, we need to have a specific reduction accounting. So if you don't use these advanced standards or tools or technologies, it would be a different story. So all the projects need to benchmark with international advanced practice. For take the hospital, for example, if we have to compare different scenarios, we have spent a lot of time to commission professional teams to do this estimation, including the third parties and experts from ADB. So we are confident about the baseline and also the accounting work. And that's why I say we are confident, because we also are supported by concessional loans. Lastly, it's the reduction scale. It can reach 1 million tons per year, and is based on the ADB TA experts. So in total, we can reduce 7 to 8 million tons. And project reduction is about 5.5 million, and policy is about 4.7 million. And we also have design externalities. And no, borrowers actually did not take in 100% of the list from the higher level government. So the lists we implement right now is totally different from the original list, because we have resolved the recommendations and we have negotiated, and we also have bargained and explained to the counterparts in Xiangtan local governments. And some of the projects might not have the highest urgency in Xiangtan, but it can help the city improve its overall image. And it involves long time negotiation and convincing. And this is a systematic project. One thing we haven't touched is iron and steel, because the fund is simply not sufficient. And we did not include facilities of clean energy, again, because of inadequate funding. But we focus on the projects closely related to people's well-being. Through these projects, we hope to increase the environment awareness of the public and Shanghai citizens. So this awareness will lead to future benefits. For example, will have prefer mass transport like subway. So this is another externality of our design. So the public will be more encouraged and incentivized to choose low carbon travel. Third is concessional costs. Actually, I mentioned before. The ADB's concessional loans is sort of offset by a long-term feasibility study, because we have done very, very thorough job, not just feasibility study, and also environment impact assessment. And this is a very complicated project with multiple layers of unlanding and guarantee, and also, as I mentioned, the negotiation between different layers of governments. So, indeed, the original cost of the funding is quite concessional, but due to the long-term negotiation, it's kind of offset. And ADB have offered a TA project with $5 million USD. So, when you apply ADB project, you need to be persistent and also committed, and involves a team of 14 experts with 1 translator. They visit Xiangtan for 6 times for all kinds of meetings and trainings involving finance, DRC, urban management. And maybe we have the Bureau of Environment from Xiangtan from the audience. And I believe you understand what I'm talking about. And sometimes you send different representatives to sit in the training, and that involves even longer negotiation and communication. All in all, this is very challenging work. In the end, we talked with the project manager of ADB. I said it's like a baby. The project is like a baby. And before you deliver, you cannot just quit the job. So this project manager originally need to be transferred to another department. However, due to the Xiangtan project, he stayed for an additional year for the same position till the project was approved by the board. And that is when the baby was finally delivered, so to speak. Fourth is the externality of the policy. Let me skip the other slides. Next slide, please. So the policy is closely matching with our project. We have 2 batches of policies. First, with 11 policies, and second has 9 policies. And all these policies need to be submitted to ADB for them to review, and then after review, they give granted the project the no on the face the matter. And then with the no, Xiangtan can design their own project. The second batch, originally it was to be released at the end of last year. However, due to pandemic, it is expected to release by the end of this year. All the policy has been approved by international experts from ADB. So these are the policies of the first, second batch. It includes the e-moto and some other very specific and detail-oriented projects. So they are quite specific instead of general. These are the calculation of the reduction. For these 15 million, no, we hope to build Xiangtan as an advanced clean technology demonstration project and to build a government support LP. Here are some basic design. Let me wrap up. To conclude, first, I thank ADB for their commitment, and all the board members approved for this project, and with flying scores. And all the experts are really devoted and committed and hope to build it as an innovative flagship project. And secondly, the ADB involves a very sophisticated streamline processes with very strict audit and evaluation. And additional third-party project management company will be commissioned for this audit and evaluation. So it might be different from your previous projects. So for all these red tape, so to speak, maybe some governments will be disencouraged. However, from this cooperation with ADB, I believe the local government has improved a lot. But we do hope the process can be streamlined. But if you are still interested in cooperating with ADB, I can make the contact because ADB is really a knowledge bank, especially in terms of low carbon development and low carbon cities. But be patient. That's my key message. In the end, all the experts of ADB still did not see eye to eye with the Xiangtan counterparts. Their belief is 2032. But from my perspective and Xiangtan perspective, we believe we can achieve early picking. So these are the framework next week. The final conclusion. So Xiangtan project has given us a lot of food for thought, and I hope it can help you in your future project. Yes, we have met a lot of challenges. So against such a background of dual carbon goals, I believe at a provincial level, we need to have a task force or a capital pool. And talked with Madam Chen Bei, the chairman of Caixin. If the provincial government can set up a earmarked fund managed by a provincial company, then a lot of bottlenecks and obstacles can be overcome. So I have an assignment for you. Please study the Shandong Green Development Fund project. I thought a lot. if a Shandong project and the Xiangtan project can be combined, can learn from each other, then the efficiency can be greatly improved. And we have a new exploration and pathways to sustainable development. So if you're interested, especially in the urban funding, please have a further study on both Xiangtan and the Shandong project. I believe you will be inspired. Lastly, the local governments cannot just refer to the previous models. You also need a local-based professional team, because the government officials cannot do everything. You need to commission the local-based consultancy firms. I talked with other consulting firms in other cities and provinces about the importance of the design, the accounting, and the policy communication. This way, we can truly promote finance, climate financing and investment. And this way, we can remove some burden away from our government. So that's my suggestion for my peers. So that wraps up my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Alan Zhang, for this wonderful presentation on Xiangtan model. And this is like a hand manual, detailed reference for all the cities. So from today's conference, you can see our organizer has prepared very carefully for this topic, both on macro and micro level. So next, let's have a panel discussion on the green topic of green finance. So let's give the floor to Dr. Yuan Chang from Caixin Financial. Alan Zhang from Hunan Innovative Low Carbon Center. Madam Mo Lingshui, consultant of ADB. Wang Shu, lead managing consultant of ICF. A few words about Mo Lingshui. She is a consultant of ADB and a senior economist. Since 2012, he is the consultant on low-carbon green development with ADB. He's also a researcher, and he also the visiting researcher of Yanmin University and the expert of the Institute of Green Innovation, and Wang Su, lead managing consultant of ICF.
Working with NDRC, the Climate Change Division Department, working on low carbon and climate change related policy initiative. Mr. Wang Shu, back in 2015, won the Young Global Leader Award by WEF. After joining ICF, Wang Shu is executive director for ICF Beijing office, and also working on Sino-European Energy Cooperation, Sino-US Energy Cooperation, and Sino-UK low-carbon development platforms with multiple important positions taken. Thank you. Well, dear fellow experts, according to the arrangements of the conference. For this panel discussion, I would like to ask a set of questions. First question is for Mr. Wang Shu. You are a senior international expert. So from the perspective of an international agency, could you provide us with an overall prospect and outlook for green finance market? What's your take on the latest research in carbon trading market? Wang Shu, by name, from ICF. I'm a lead managing consultant. After listening to previous presentations, this room is full of experts. I'm an expert on climate change, not on finance. So I'm a non-financial practitioner to offer some of my observations. And also, let me try to respond to a few points I heard over the morning. With this question in place, I think in the interest of time, let me be very brief for one observation and several takeaways. For one observation, and I think for international financial institutions, what's their prospects for the future market? You know BlackRock, right? BlackRock is one of the most leading international financial institutional investors. According to BlackRock, in order to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, we need at least $1 trillion of green finance every year from 2020 onward, excluding China. So from 2020 onward, there's only $150 billion of green finance available, with a gap of $850 billion unfunded. Now let's do some contrast. From January to July this year, the developed economies spent $9 trillion on COVID response. So if we are to cope with the challenges brought about by climate change, there's a huge funding gap. According to those financial institutions, how do we fill this gap? They want to see public finance playing a leading role to jumpstart the involvement of more private investments, because private investors are more concerned with risks. For many green finance projects, what about the return on investment? And those projects tend to be quite risky, and private investors or financial institutions would like to see government investment taking the lead to put in place a risk-sharing mechanism. So with government investment taking the lead and serving as an endorsement, there will be more private investors following the government. So we heard similar ideas throughout the morning. And first, in the case of international practices for some foreign governments, they put in place a very solid foundation for green finance. EU has rolled out the Green Deal, saying by 2050, they're reducing carbon emission by 55%. And in this Green Deal, a very big part is devoted to green investment and green finance. In the case of the UK, only several days ago, the UK issued a strategy to achieve net zero emission with a section dedicated to green investment. So in those regions and countries, they are changing their legislation or adding up to their legislation to reflect their green investment and green financing imperatives with very detailed regulations and implementation rules. That's a very good point to start with. Second takeaway for standards governing green financing as well as industry standards. Some foreign governments are quite ahead of the curve. In the case of EU, targeting green investment, the EU is improving upon its terminology, looking at some latest developments and scenarios, making changes accordingly. They are doing their best to reduce greenwash, to make sure that every green investment is genuine green. And they are issuing a lot of standards regarding that. Thirdly, in the case of some other countries, the governments, businesses, there's a close public-private partnership, PPP. And when each new policy is promulgated, they will seek comments from the industry. After the policies are promulgated in the implementation stage, for example, in The Hague of the Netherlands, there was a court ruling saying the government is not doing enough on low carbon policy, and it supports the government in taking tougher measures on going green. So from legislation to law enforcement or even to litigation, there is an entire chain of support for green initiatives, for green finance to make progress in China, in the institutional setup and the law enforcement. There's a lot that we can learn from our international peers. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wang Shu. Second, Madam Mo, as a senior expert on 3060 target. So with this 3060 as a context, what about the current policy mechanisms? What gaps are there and what changes need to be in place? Well, for green finance in China, we proposed a policy framework for green finance. And that was the only nationally sponsored green finance policy framework in the world at that time. So we've witnessed a lot of a breakthrough in green finance development. Last year, the green investment in China topped 12 trillion RMB yuan with the 3060 targets in place. The bar has been set higher for green finance development. At present, in terms of the policy framework, we still have a gap vis-à-vis the 3060 target in the following aspects. First, in terms of standardization and regulation, there's a gap with regard to 3060, for example, for our green finance standards. Despite the presence of a catalog of green bond initiatives, the clean utilization, clean coal projects have been kicked out of this catalog. That comes as a point of progress. But for the standards governing green industries and the green projects, we do not have a complete system of standards. So going forward, we need to standardize green development with vis-à-vis the 3060 targets. And for financial information and climate risk disclosure by financial institutions, there's a lack of compulsory or mandatory requirements. In particular, for the carbon footprint of financial assets, there is no mandatory requirement for disclosure. That features a gap with 36 objective. Thirdly, there's a lack of incentive mechanism for green finance on the part of the financial institutions, according to their traditional business model. When they engage in green bonds, in the absence of incentives, they would prefer doing traditional loans instead of new green loans, because traditional industry loans could prove more profitable and less riskier than green loans. That's caused by a lack of incentives for being green. And the PBOC has conducted a survey on the green borrowers versus traditional borrowers, and the PD, probability of default, is actually lower instead of being higher. Hence, there's a need for an incentive program. And thirdly, in our policy framework, there is a lack of a financial instrument aligned to 3060 mandate. I think that's the areas or fields whereby there's a gap. And according to Dr. Ma Jun, at the Green Finance Annual Conference, he talked about what's next. He mentioned several aspects. I want to borrow from his plans and observations by saying what's next for policy reforms going forward. Yes, we've talked about gaps, and you've got to fill the gaps. And you've got to revise green finance standards in congruence with 3060 targets. According to PBOC, they have come up with an overall strategy highlighting 3 functions and 5 pillars. And talking about the need for unified national standards in keeping with international standards. Second, for financial institutions, there should be requirements on environmental and climate information disclosure. Of late, there's been a standard on financial institution environmental and climate disclosure. So the next logical step is having a mandatory requirement. It's no longer voluntary disclosure. Thirdly, the PBOC is also exploring possibilities to readjust the risk weighting of green finance, risk weighting. Number 4, some financial instruments associated with carbon emission reduction will be offered. Back in 2017, ADB and PBOC conducted a joint research project on BRI, green finance projects. And in this research project, we worked on a benchmark or yardstick for green finance, saying that the green investment portfolio companies must show their abatement or emission reduction effectiveness. Then with the 3060 targets solidly in place, the 2017 proposal is gaining traction, or is becoming more practical, which means our financial instruments should be matched with the abatement effectiveness of financial assets. And then in this way, for brown assets, we should increase the cost, and for abatement projects, we should lower the cost, financing cost for them. So those are the future initiatives going forward. Next question, Mr. Zhang Fan, Chairman Zhang Fan. You have given us a vivid example about Xiangtan addressing the pain points in the pursuit of city-based green development. As a senior expert on that, especially based on the Xiangtan case, could you offer some best practices that other local governments could adopt? What are the pain points for local governments across the board in seeking low-carbon development? Oh, thank you. Before addressing your question, let me state the following clearly in the right context in 4 aspects. First, how can cities have access to climate financing or green financing? They want to do something, but they do not have access to funding. The first issue. Second part, for company-sponsored activities that contribute to abatement and climate response, how can they be incentivized or rewarded with gains or even monetization? And then now we have a national carbon market. There will be a lot of trading, and in the future, green credit and green bonds will enjoy preferential treatment. But is there a possibility to provide an overarching market-based mechanism to govern all those offerings? Next point, which was not covered much, what about private capital at the equity level? Like a private equity capital, how should their capabilities be leveraged in supporting city-centric environmental technology developments? For environmental technologies, because of a long investment cycle and heavy capex, few private investors are interested in them, in contrast to consumer industries. But now with the 3060 targets in place, are those investments becoming more attractive? This afternoon we're going to have a roadshow showcasing 5 low-carbon projects with senior investors playing the part of commentators. Number 4, I'm very much focused on demand, on consumption. Now, we used to talk about inclusive finance, and now we're talking about green inclusive finance. On Alipay, there's an ant forest game. That's a typical scenario in mobile internet. Could we leverage that model to mobilize consumers into this effort? Could we link green performance with the personal credit history or information of individuals? And I think Caixin could also play a leading role in this part. So if everybody could establish a carbon account, showcasing his or her carbon performance, more and more people will take public commuting, such as metro, and more people would purchase EVs instead of ICE cars. Now, talking about pain points at the city level, first, they don't know what solution is right for them. It is not necessarily they don't know where to find money. Many local governments are highly indebted. They cannot further leverage themselves. But the really difficulty is with a multitude of solutions. Which solution can offer true carbon emission reduction together with development potentials? If I just get rid of iron, steel, cement, and building materials altogether, what's the next growth engine for my city?
So in my opinion, the suppliers need to get alliance and to work out the solutions. For example, transport solution, building solution, etc., etc. So from day one's parallel sessions, we talked about a lot of solutions. For example, buildings need to work with companies like a Broad Group. Broad Group is specialized in prefabricated buildings, which cannot be delivered direct to consumers. So they can work with the real estate sector. And you have the solution. You can get the fund. And you also need policy support. Sometimes we have inconsistent policy. And Broad, for example, have worked a lot of time for the policy support. And for parallel 6, we talk about smart transport. And sometimes they need to work on a pilot program. And then when they find this program as successful, then it can be replicable to all the projects or to all the localities. So that's my point. The policy need to be flexible and need to support the solutions. And the funding actually is not a key issue. Funding is not as difficult as a solution and policy support. So capital is smart. They will find good projects. That's my point. So you're talking about a total solution. And based on the whole financial system, I don't know whether it is based mainly on the credit or no or other products. So I believe learn a lot from suggestions from Alan Zhang. So now, what's your perspective? So from the perspective of capital market, direct financing, in the context of dual carbon targets, I think the funding can play a comprehensive role in every detail, in every link, to support the attainment of the dual target. Take investment, for example. It involves the primary, secondary market. And in China, ESG impact investment. Indeed, in China, is still at the in crescent, the beginning stage, still lagging behind with the USA and Europe. And from the primary capital market perspective, we have just founded a number of funds. But in the future, we hope to have different layers of industrial fund so that the government can better guide the funneling of capital. Actually, I saw a lot of local governments already working on that. As Alan mentioned about equity foundation or equity capital, and I do believe capital is smart. When they spot the direction, the correct field, they will crowd in. And for the equity fund, currently, the carbon directly related equity fund are not that many. However, a lot of equity funds are paying more attention to green projects when they are identifying their targets. So they are more and more carbon aware and believe they do know the future returns of these sectors. For the secondary market, indeed, I believe many of you also buy stocks on the stock market. If you bought PV stocks and NEV stocks, I believe you have earned a lot last year. This year, we saw some volatility. Maybe the returns was not handsome was last year, but in the long term, I believe you will be handsomely rewarded. From the risk perspective, you may think these stocks have a lot of bubbles. But in my opinion, they are not bubbles. The evaluation of current products should be based on its future earnings. So, from this perspective, new energy and other project, green project related, and other under-evaluated, like wind farms related projects, and they will have a long-term solution. And the primary market will again need the flow of the secondary market. In terms of asset management in China, including ESG-related funds, in China, we don't have a harmonized, consistent standards. So, in terms of the broad sense of ESG, that is the fund above 200 billion RMB. So, it has a lot of room for further development. A lot of retail investors, if you hire a professional company to manage asset, I believe ESG is a good direction. And I believe it will further leverage the flow into the secondary market. Stocks, green finance products, credits, climate bonds, etc. will have further development and innovation. Of course, we need to be better aligned with international standards in terms of its evaluation, reporting, the use of the proceeds, etc. And in the future, and I think we need more innovation. From my slide, I already shared with you the interest rate of green bond is quite low. In terms of the innovation of a green bond, we need to have a better development of inclusive finance, and also work for the financing demand of SMEs along the supply chain, like ABS and other innovative bond projects. And that way we can better meet the financing need of businesses and have a better coordinated development of the whole supply chain. So here are my 2 cents. Due to limited time, one last question to 4 experts. Please summarize in 1 sentence. So in the next 3 decades, compared with USA and the EU, China may have much shorter time to achieve carbon neutral. So green finance need to play an even bigger role. So can you summarize, like in 1 sentence, what's your expectations for green finance? Finance is a people's game. And China is good at mobilizing people. So China will do a good job to use financial tools to achieve carbon neutral. So I'm confident about attainment of these targets, and China will be a leader. The 13-16 target, carbon peaking, and the carbon neutral. I heard read the article from Economist. There's an interesting sentence. So facing energy security, we will have to talk about the financing for the transition period, like for natural gas. Natural gas is like cleaner than coal. However, it is still a fossil fuel, so it still has to be used during the transitional phase in order to meet the energy security. So you need to work on your portfolio. Take a full consideration and strike a balance between carbon neutral and energy security. I have 2 points to share. First, green finance. First, how to combine the 2 keywords, green and finance. Finance is always profit-oriented. And for green is critical for the carbon targets. So how to make true green finance? We need to consider the feature of the both aspects. Secondly, green finance is not just about green. It also has to support transitional period. A lot of companies are still in transition period. You cannot just simply cut off their loans. Otherwise, they will not survive. So finance need to support the transition of businesses. So these are some of my thoughts. Thank you. So for the carbon target, it is a top-down target in China, and it indeed lead effort at all levels. So in longer term, the attainment of the carbon neutral happens in this century with many changes unseen before. So in the short term, you may face pressure, but in the future, I believe it will have important impact and is a cause benefit to future generations. 2016 carbon neutral. By then, we might be in our 70s or even 80s. So the work we do will benefit future generations to come. So not just people from the business community, but also from financial sectors, we need to work together to achieve this goal for the benefits of future generations, so that we can have a better life. Thank you. So here wraps up for this morning session. We would like to thank all the panelists. Thank you.